We're going to spend a few minutes now, let it going around, let everybody introduce themselves. That way everybody gets to know each other. And then we will have our featured speaker do a short presentation. We're going to be talking about goal setting, specifically with podcasting, but it also applies to guesting. I think everybody will definitely get some super tips. Everybody really loved it yesterday, and I will share the replay of that as well if you would like. And then at the end, we'll spend some time, we'll do some breakout rooms so people can connect a little bit more in small groups and talk about what we learned from Alesia today. So I will get started. Hi, everyone. I know most everyone in the room, but I will remind everyone who I am. I'm Julie Marty-Pearson. I am a podcaster, speaker, coach, and advocate. I help women own their voice and share their story through podcasting as awesome guests or by starting their own podcast or growing an existing one. I created the Women's Podcaster Party because I saw a need in podcasting for there to be spaces for women where women could feel safe and ask questions maybe they didn't want to in bigger rooms. We could talk about the things we talk about. And I don't remember who said it yesterday. Someone said that, there isn't a category in podcasting for women. Like there isn't an entrepreneurship for women, right? And so a lot of us want to create the community for women because we can't necessarily self-select within podcasting. So that is what I've tried to create here. And I also have my Podcast Your Story community membership, which is a low cost membership you can join to come and get live coaching, workshops, and other exciting things like Pitch Fest, which I will share more about later. I have two podcasts, The Story of My Pet, which is all about advocating and educating around animal welfare and rescue. And the second is Podcast Your Story, which is where I interview women podcasters about their journey in podcasting and share my tips around guesting and hosting. So I will start with our speaker, Alesia, to do a brief intro, and then we'll work around the Zoom room.
All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. I am so sorry. My voice is a little deeper, a little more sultry today than I had hoped. But if at any point during the presentation I mute myself, throw myself off camera to cough, don't mind me. Julie will pick it up. She did so good yesterday helping me with that, so I appreciate that. So yes, I'm Alesia. I'm from North Carolina. I run a podcast production micro agency. It's me and two other women, and we support podcasters with all the back end stuff and the strategy. So really looking at, all right, let's go ahead and edit it. Let's go ahead and market it. Let's do the strategy around it and getting all those things done so people can record, and then we do the rest. And I am the host of two podcasts currently. And I say currently because if y'all are podcasters, once you get bit by the podcast bug, you want to make a ton of podcasts. And so I started podcasting in 2018. And my two current ones are Podcasting Unlocked, which is specifically for impact-driven podcasters looking to make a difference in the world with their show. And We Read Smut, which is literally exactly what it sounds like. Just a place to talk about diverse romances and smutty romances and down with purity culture and all of that fun stuff. And I have a blast with it, but it's just for funsies. And so that is a bit about me.
I think you should record some of the about smut ones with the voice like this. That probably really great ASMR for your smut podcast. So Alicia and I actually met in another community, the Feminist Podcast Collaborative, and that is run by Becky Mellencamp. It is another great community for podcasters that I will drop a link for later. Be welcome to check out. It's definitely a place where I've connected with some other amazing podcasters I hadn't met in other communities. Okay, let's go around the Zoom room. I have up next Rachel. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Davila, and my business is Extra Hands Virtual Assistants. And when I hired my own VA, I learned how scary it was from the client side of the VA client relationship. And so I created a podcast called Hey, Do I Need a VA? Where myself and three castmates, we talk about the things that VAs wish clients would know when they're looking to find, hire, and work with a VA. And we are in the middle of recording season 4. And Alesia, I know what you mean about the bug. I already got 2 more ideas for podcasts. And from a VA side, I need to talk with you because I don't know anything about the back end side of the podcast. My assistant does all that, and they are a college senior, so I'm pretty sure they're going to leave me at some point. And then I will be dead in the water because I don't want to learn it. And I learned that about delegation. So um, I'm in East County, San Diego. And yeah, been doing it since February, a couple years ago.
Oh, great. Well, happy to have you. Feel free to drop the link to your podcast in the chat, and that's the same for everyone. I love that topic though. VA, a podcast about VA work and how to prepare and set your VA up for success. I've done some VA work myself for others, and there's turnover if you don't have the person before there when the new person comes on, or there's just so many ways. So I can imagine how helpful your podcast is. Okay, next up in my Zoom room is Super Kate. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, Super Kate here. SK is also awesome. Kate is fine, just not Katie. Ever, never, ever Katie. Uh, I so I really love working with those incredible, multi-passionate business owners who have been basically sprinting since the moment they decided to start their business. And they've been sprinting so hard that even when they're like they have that light bulb moment of I need help and they hire a VA, they often don't know what to do with the VA except throw tasks at them, and they just keep sprinting. And a lot of that sprinting, while has to do with passion, it also has to do with nervous system dysregulation, irregular, whatever. The nervous system is shot, and a lot of that has to do with the society that we grew up in, the patterns we are modeled into, and all of that. And I really love working with these women to understand that it's more of a marathon if they really want to make the impact in the world that they want to make. So I come in, I'm the weighted blanket for their nervous system, and we help, like we just re-navigate everything. We dismantle a few things, and sometimes we do that without slowing down because they don't have time to slow down
Right.
because of the impact they want to make. And I love being a guest. I love having the conversations on the podcast. That is one thing that is a hard line for me. If you're going to have me on the podcast and just spit questions at me with no back and forth, it's not interesting to me. I want to have the connection with you as a host. So yeah, that is there's a little bit about me. Middle of Illinois, cat mom, and super, super grateful that fall is finally here and I get to have my weather instead of suffering through the summer. So there you go. All right. Nice to meet you all.
I feel that deeply. It is under 80 here, which is our fall, and being able to wear a long sleeve for part of the day makes me happy. So, and everybody's saying they love the weighted blanket for your clients, and I have to say, your weighted blanket is a great name for a podcast or a book. Like, I just started thinking of all these things as you said that. It's such a great way to think about it. So, just had to say that.
It's such a new thing. I haven't even gotten to the okay, podcast, interesting. Much
Yeah.
faster to a podcast than a book right now. So thank you.
Okay, next up in my Zoom room is Connie.
I am so wondering what I'm going to say.
You know what to
So,
say.
I'm Connie Warden, and I live in Littleton, Colorado. And I wrote a book who I thought, okay, I wrote the book, I published it, that's it. I mean, everything, that whole process is such a big deal. And then I sat with that and I'm like, I got to market this book. People are saying so many cool things about it. They're getting so many different jewels from it. And the book is I thought was going to be called How to Be a More Mindful, Kindful Driver on the Road, because one day I was a super jerk. And I said, that's not who I want to be. And how do I take what I'm teaching in yoga, mindfulness, oh my God, even acupuncture with the 5 elements and that whole thing, and apply it to being on the road. And so that's my big thing right now, is trying to get this book out, because people are just getting a lot of good stuff from it. And it is really pushing my comfort zone. If I could be, I used to be able, I swear to God, be able to teach people how to be in the witness protection program on how to hide. I would be the person. But I'm learning that I really need to not do that, or to push up against that and go, okay, let's be more visible. And so that's where I'm at, and that's where I want to guest podcast and share this story. And I just came up with an idea today to do a speaking gig on the 5 elements of Chinese acupuncture, but use the 5 elements as a way to work your business. How do we use these 5 elements, fire, water, metal, water, no, fire, earth, metal, water, wood, to become a better business person? So that's me.
Interesting. Love it. And Connie has been guesting, even though she says she's just starting out. She has been on several podcasts recently. And feel free to drop any of those in the chat if you want to, Connie. Okay, next up in my Zoom room, Katerina. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Katerina Rando, San Francisco, California. My podcast is called Expand Your Fempire. We have over 150 episodes recorded. It's for women who have their own business. I call your business your Fempire. And what I do is I, share super tips and ideas and strategies related to speaking, selling, cultivating community, scaling, hosting retreats, and whatever else I feel like I want to talk about. And we also have guests. And my I also like to be a guest on other people's podcasts. I'm always looking for other podcasts that have an audience of women in business. And one of the things I like to bring to that opportunity is to talk more about the difference between men and women sell differently, we buy differently, we run our businesses differently. I like to talk about wearing your heart all over your business, about having business besties, and the power of community to thrive, not only thrive, but also to bliss in your business. That's me. Thanks, Julie.
Yes. And you can hear more about Katerina on my podcast. I interviewed her a while ago, but I will drop that link in the chat as well. Thank you for being here, Katerina. And she's the queen of retreats. If you want to learn anything about retreats or go on great retreats, definitely check out Katerina's stuff because she knows it. And I've been on a couple myself, and it is super fun. Okay, next up, Tracy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, I am Tracy. I'm in Santa Cruz, California, and I have a trifecta that I do. The first thing I do is this gather community thing. This is a community, online community for women leaders and entrepreneurs. We support those women and every woman that we gather in our community with connection and understanding and support. We do workshops and summits and networking and co-working, and we have a game night every month, and kind of everything that those of us who are working by ourselves in our room outside our bedroom to make things happen with our clients and our community. I want to support everyone in doing that and in enjoying that process and not feeling alone and feeling like, you know, you can make anything happen, because it's true, you can. That's takes up most of my time. The other things that I do is I do retreats for women. These are a smaller group of people, you know, somewhere around a dozen or so is going to be the number for our next retreat, which is scheduled for next September here in Santa Cruz. Katerina will be coming, very exciting. I'm really excited about it because as my retreats have grown, I get a little clearer on what I want that to look like instead of kind of figuring out what is available to me and going with that. And so this is going to be a little extra fancy, a little extra bougie, a little extra special. Very excited. Katerina's very excited about the extra bougie. So I'm very excited about that. We're signing that contract. I have a draft of the contract right here, but it's being updated. So we're getting close to signing that off, and that's exciting. And then the third thing is I have podcast. My podcast is called The Bold and Brilliant Podcast. The fabulous Julie helped me figure out all the things that I had no idea about to make that happen. So she supported that. We've been going for this year, and I have the structure set up to get to 30 episodes here before the end of the year, which is going to be a lot coming up. So definitely come in and subscribe, because there's going to be a lot of content coming out in the next couple of months. And I'm taking interest for next year, and I'd love to invite you all to check us out. And if it feels like a great space for you and your message, to invite you to come on. And if you have a podcast, I'd love to swap. So I'm collecting interest for that, and that'll be in the chat, as well as the link to the podcast and our community and all the other things that we do. So it's great to be here. I'm glad I could make it. It was a struggle.
Yeah, I understand. There's 10 things going on at the same time right now, it feels
Mhm,
like.
mhm.
Love to hear that though, as a coach. Very proud of you to say you're almost you're getting to 30 episodes. And I have been on the podcast, so you can check that out. An upcoming episode, my podcast will feature Tracy talking about her launching process and all of that for anybody you know that wants to learn more about that. And then another client of mine, I'm not sure if she can unmute and join us. I know Elaine was driving. So, Elaine, if you want to unmute, you can. Otherwise, we will keep the party going. Well, I will tell everyone for Elaine. Elaine has a podcast called Captivate the Mic, and it is all about speaking, owning the room, and showing up on video. And I will drop the link for that if she's not able to. Okay, let's jump into our speaker. And Leisha's going to share her screen and go through a short presentation talking about goal setting. If at any point you have a question or comment, drop it in the chat or unmute and simply ask it. This is very interactive. Please engage, ask all the questions you would like.
Awesome.
I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Julie. So I am someone where, like, if I don't ask my question when it's at the top of my head, I get distracted and then I lose my question, especially if people keep talking. So feel free to drop it with a Q, a dash, and then whatever your question is in the chat so I can make sure that I go back and grab those if I miss them as we're talking through this. All right. So, like Julie said, this can be relevant whether you have a podcast or you don't, and really goal setting around the things that you want to do. And you can use these strategies also as a guest as you're talking through, and we can talk through some examples of that as we go through this. All right, so first we're going to decide on our podcast goals. And this could be even if you're someone who's like, all right, look, I do not want to have a podcast at all, but maybe it's what do you want your results from your podcast guesting to achieve? And we can talk about that. And then creating an action plan around it. Like I said, my name is, oh, my thing is acting a little slow right now. Come on. There we go. My name's Alesia, and I'm the host of two podcasts, but I run Galati Media, which is a full service podcast management agency. And why should we create our goals? 1 second, gonna cough.
I also dropped in the chat if you, after hearing Alesia, you want to talk through something or ask some specific questions. I dropped a link. You can get a 15-minute session with her to ask all your burning questions after the event.
Thank you. All right, so why should we create goals? Goals help us gain clarity and focus, increase our motivation, and measure our success, which is really important. And I want to talk about creating achievable podcast goals. So often when we have these ideas of like, I'm going to launch a podcast and I'm going to have 100,000 downloads in the first year, or I'm going to launch a podcast, or I'm going to produce a podcast and it's going to have like, I'm going to double my listeners in the next 6 months. Is that actually a realistic goal based on what your numbers have been and the actions that you're putting into them? So I want us to create some SMART goals. And I know it's like, oh God, marketing class again. We'll be quick, I promise. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. Make sure that your podcast goals are this way. It's so, so important. So here are some potential goals that I've seen just from having launched over 25 shows, produced over 50. This is what I'm seeing across the board with the people that I talk to. That they typically land in one of these four. And you might be thinking, I do not want to have to pick one. I want to pick two. That's okay too, but I would recommend you'll see some overlap in some of the actions across the board. So if you pick growth, you might also see engagement. Or if you pick engagement, you're probably going to see some growth or some impact as well. But let's try to focus on one for the next 6 months. So the first is conversion. You want to turn your listeners into potential clients for your business. If you're a guest on a podcast, your goal being there is you want to convert those listeners into leads. So increasing your revenue. And the next is impact. You want to increase the brand awareness that you have and education for your audience. So brand visibility. We see this a lot with our nonprofits where their focus is really around impact. Growth, you want to increase your audience and grow that exponentially. So increasing downloads. If you're a guest, then that could just look like you want to have your social audience be bigger, your email list be bigger, things like that. And then engagement. You want to see more engagement and more interactions from your podcast listeners or from the people that are listening to the podcasts that you are guesting on. So after going through that, kind of thinking about what is that goal, and feel free to drop it in the chat of like, I'm thinking I might want this goal. So here's some examples if you're like, okay, but how do I put this into like an actual attainable goal? Again, we're going to keep this 6 months idea. You have a very niche podcast. So for conversion, you have a very niche podcast and you want to sell half of your coaching services through your podcast or through your podcast guesting. Next, you want to create an impact. You want to increase your social mentions by a certain percentage and the shares from your podcast content. Third, growth. You want to double your 30-day podcast episode downloads. So this could be like if you're someone who's a guest, then the views to your content in 30 days window. What does that look like in 6 months? What do you want that to look like? And then engagement, you want to double your ratings, your comments, or your reviews across platforms that can leave them. So that's more specific to podcast hosts. And I know we have people who are not hosts yet, if we haven't already convinced you. And so the thing that you could do for engagement could be something along the lines of you want people to send you a DM from a podcast episode that you were a guest on. And that could be your engagement factor.
Another good engagement for guests is one, you resharing episodes to your own YouTube channel, because then you can see engagement directly on the videos you're sharing. Or if you use a service like Podmatch, your engagement could be doubling the number of reviews you have as a guest, which the more reviews you have, the more likely you are to be matched with more podcasts in that service. Just as some examples for the guests.
Yeah, those are good. We're not going to go through overcoming roadblocks because y'all probably already know them. These are for people who are like, I don't want to pick one. Time constraints, lack of motivation, comparison to others, and fear of failure. Those are the ones we tend to see. But let's just jump right into creating an action plan. All right, so we talked about these ideas of these potential goals. You've narrowed it down to one. If you're still struggling with narrowing it down, which one are you like, if you had to pick one, and or if you had both behind your, I do this with my kids. They're 11 and 8. And, one might want ice cream and the other one might maybe he wants ice cream and he wants some Skittles as well. And I'm like, you got to pick one. And he's like, oh, well, I want both. I'm like, if I were to tell you you have to have ice cream, that's the option. Would you be really disappointed, or would you really want the Skittles? Just be intuitive about it. Which one are you kind of like, oh, wait, I kind of want to do that one more. So choose that one. And let's go ahead and go through some actions for each of these. So if your goal is audience conversion, here are some things you're going to want to do. The first is create a dynamic ad that discusses your current services. Now, this is very specific to podcast hosts, and we can come up with some ideas in the Q&A portion or in the breakout sessions of some ideas of ways to do this as well as a guest. But having dynamic ads where you offer your free service, your low ticket offer, and your higher ticket offers, having those interchanging so that people know what you do. Next, make the ask of either your listener or your guest. Maybe you're someone who is using your podcast as a way to turn your guests into clients, connections, or collaborators. And so finding ways that you can make that ask. Usually when people come to me and they're like, I want more leads from my podcast, I'm like, cool. When was the last time you told people what you do? And they're like, slowly back away, right? Like, you have to tell people what you do. Otherwise, they're just there for the content. Find a way to give examples of the work that you do in the next 8 of your 10 episodes. And for the people who are guests, I would say you should find examples in every way to give examples of, like, in every guest opportunity you have, give examples of what it's like to work with you. And this doesn't have to be well, in my coaching program, it doesn't have to be like that. It could just simply be, here's something that we saw, here's how we worked on it. And so this was a result that we were able to get because we worked on it this specific way. Right. And it shows the process so that the listener can imagine themselves in that struggle, or is like, oh my goodness, me too. I'm feeling that. And then they want to work with you. So give those examples in natural ways. Increase your audience through strategic podcast guesting. And you will see this one through every single one of these because it fits in everyone and it works for every single one. Review your content to ensure that it's addressing those questions that your potential clients have before they're working with you, so that you're actually making it make sense for, hey, we're listening to this podcast, to then be able to transition from listening to then booking a call and getting to know you, because you've already maybe solved a small problem or delivered some incredible value. And then they're like, if the free stuff is like this, I can't imagine what the paid stuff is like. Let's go deep. And then track your leads. So if you use something like Calendly, Honeybook, etc., any of those, you can have a question on there that says, where did you find me? Where did you discover me? Have it be, I heard you on a podcast, or from your own podcast. All right, so actions on impact. If your goal is impact, these are some actions you're going to want to take. The first is to grow your social presence so that people recognize you. Now, this is across your branding, your messaging, how you talk about what you do. Make sure that you're clear and concise. I had someone who wanted to launch with me, and after having our initial chat, I was like, I love what you do, and I have a tiny idea of what you do, but the way that you're articulating it is not ready for a podcast yet. Like, I need you to go guest on some podcasts, get clear on your messaging, get clear on what it is that you're trying to say, the questions that your ideal person has. And then after that, feel free to come back. But I am not going to take your money because I don't think that you're going to get the results that I would want you to be able to get, because your message is not super crystal clear. So make sure that you are so clear on that. Next, create and nurture an email community so you can educate your audience no matter where they are. And so here you could use the same idea of, oh, well, I want engagement and I want conversion and I want impact. this is a great way to do that, where you think, all right, I want to convert my listeners into leads, but I kind of want that impact and I want to grow my email list. All right, I want to direct my listeners to then sign up for my freebie. And then my email list is where I'm going to nurture them and convert them into clients, right? So you can section it off and figure out how you want that funnel to really work. So make sure you create that and nurture it. Increase your audience through strategic podcast guesting. Review your content to ensure that you are interviewing the right people. And I see this quite often, especially for people who are trying to make an impact. They think I have to have the biggest name people in my industry. 95% of the time, that does not mean that you are going to grow your audience, because those big guests have so many places that they've already been a guest that their episodes actually don't do as well. And we've seen their episodes typically are like the worst ones. And they just don't equal those bigger download numbers that you're probably looking for. And it's those people who are so excited to be on your show, who have so much incredible value and are just happy to be there, that those are the ones that end up doing so much better. So make sure that you're interviewing the right people. And if you're interviewing big name people for clout and to be like, I had this person on my podcast, that's okay too, right? Like, that is not a problem. Just set the expectation that it's not going to have the same download results as maybe some of your other episodes. And then track your results to see what's working and what's not. And then follow best practices for podcast marketing. And I say podcast marketing, that could be social marketing. It could be you're going to create some business cards with a QR code and post it up at your local coffee shop or your library, or maybe you do like a workshop at your local library, right? Like all these different ways to market and talk about your podcast in different ways, but follow those best practices for that. All right. Audience growth. This is one that we see a lot of people want. It's either conversion or growth that most people want. Increase your audience through strategic podcast guesting. We saw clients double and then triple their podcast download numbers with steady, like there was a steady drop off, right? Because she had a lot of backlog that people could listen to, but she had about a 70% retention of those new listeners and new followers, which was really great. So podcast guesting is such a great strategy to increase your audience, because podcast listeners are already there and it's easy to direct them to your podcast. Gonna cough 1 second.
I was going to say something about the big names, because I've seen this with my pet podcast. I've had some bigger nonprofits on, and I thought that was going to get a boost, but it didn't. And it was because they didn't really share. So the bigger names may not always be doing the effort to promote it like some of the lesser known people. And also, something we talked about yesterday is, depending on your niche, bigger names sometimes are promoting something like a book, and they're on like 5 or 10 other podcasts at the same time. So they're actually saturating the audience. And if you've already heard an interview by them, they're not going to want to listen to another one. So those are some of the things I've seen personally.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's pretty annoying, but it is what it is. All right. And then share about your podcast at least once a week outside of your typical marketing. So if you already have like, all right, I post on socials, I send my email list, I craft a blog and I put that up on Pinterest, I do those things. What is something you can do kind of outside the box? I have a bingo card. It's a freebie on my website where you can literally just, here are things between 5 minutes and maybe 20 minutes of things that you can do that are out of the box marketing and some quick and easy ways. Maybe it's as simple as putting your podcast in your signature on your email, or maybe it's as simple as telling the soccer mom next to you that you have a podcast because it's relevant to the conversation, right? So finding different ways outside of your typical podcast marketing, following best practices for podcast marketing, engaging with potential listeners on your social channels, be social on social media. So often I think we just post and ghost, and that doesn't really create community. It's not going to help you grow, and your audience isn't going to keep you top of mind if all you're doing is just new episode, who dis, right? Like, we don't need to do that. And then optimize your podcast content for SEO. This is a whole beast. And one of the questions yesterday was, can you go back to past episodes if you're already, say, 30 episodes in? Yes, you absolutely can. You can go back and redo or make those small tweaks or edits to the written copy of your podcast episodes to revitalize those for SEO purposes. And that could be anything from your title, your description, title, podcast description, episode description, even your YouTube titles should be different than your podcast episode titles, right? Because YouTube wants something different from an SEO perspective than your Spotify does. So you have to be really strategic with that. And so it does take a little bit of effort and a little bit of work. And so I take it one episode at a time, start here and forward. And then as you have time and get better, you can go back to past episodes. And then use this call to action in every single episode. If you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please make sure you share it with them. And I found that this really helps people because, yes, while SEO is still really important, a friend recommending a podcast is still one of the best ways to get new listeners because there's already that know, like, and trust. And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. New podcast. Let's go ahead and get that right in. And so make sure that you're asking your listener to share this with someone. And it can be just something you have in your outro. But we have one client where at the end of every episode, she will specifically say, if you know someone who needs this specific message, and she'll reference what was discussed in the episode, please make sure that you share it with them because we need more women to know about this, right? And it's a menopause. It's about pleasure in menopause and perimenopause. It's called Pleasure in the Pause. And so I love her approach to that and making sure that it's like women need this message. Make sure you're sharing it with your friends because everyone needs to know about this stuff. And then
I was going to say, I also think people are more responsive now to unique intros and outros for every episode because you can make those statements that are specific to what the topic is or who you're interviewing. And that's more likely to people to keep listening and listening to the end and doing the referral piece of it. I think that when I started podcasting, everybody had the same intro and outro for every episode. And that's changed tremendously over the last 4 years.
Yeah, 100%. I actually shortened mine to be like 10 seconds or something like that. Like, how can we condense this? Get to the meat. Let's go. All right. So, actions for audience engagement. If you're trying to get more engagement from your podcast, run a contest or a giveaway for those who leave ratings and reviews. And I don't just mean Apple Podcast reviews, I'm an Android girly. So, I'm like, where are the other places? So, we have Spotify comments, and they can screenshot their rating. All the person has to do is listen to 5 minutes of an episode to leave a rating on Spotify. And then they can leave a comment on the episode. Apple Podcasts, of course. And then Good Pods is another place where if people listen there and leave a rating, it's actually more likely that you can chart on Good Pods because they have such a small listener base. That we have one client, she's just launched a couple months ago, and I think there was like one person who listened to her podcast over on Good Pods, and she's charting in like 5 charts in like top 50 across her category. So then she's able to use that in her marketing. No one's gonna know. It's fine.
And I can say I've had success like that on Good Pods with my pet podcast. And I honestly don't remember the last time I actually went there and made a post, but because I did it when I first joined Good Pods, there's enough that I chart on like the top cat podcast, the top pet podcast, and I get the email pretty much every month with the same charts. because there
Nice.
obviously aren't a lot of other pet podcasts doing it. So then I can say, look, I'm number one on all these charts. And nobody knows that it's like could be 5 people listening to make that
Right.
happen. But and so that is the thing, is pick your places, but then be active, and you can do the same thing on YouTube too.
Yep. And then contests and giveaways. We've seen one client do this where they had a membership, and so they at once a month would read a rating or a review from their audience, and we made sure that we were pulling the international reviews as well for this one because they were very globally. And that person had to make sure they put their Instagram handle in the rating or review to be selected. And then they were able to say, here's a free month in the membership. And then it gets people included in the membership, interested in it, gives them free stuff, and then gets you more ratings and more reviews. Next, review your content to ensure that it is leading towards engagement, that you're very strategic with your content, you're not all over the place, you don't deviate from what your listeners are actually interested in, and make sure that you're like letting them know, hey, I want you to engage with this content. I want you to ask me questions, or I want you to send me a DM, or I want you to do these things. Next, encourage your audience to send you an email or a message. I did this week on my We Read Smut podcast. I ran a poll on Instagram and was like, I have a few ideas on what I want to talk about in this episode. Here are the options. Let me know which one you want. And I got my top one and I did the episode on that, but it gave me 3 others and the order that I plan on doing those episodes in based on what the interest was. And it was my most clicked poll I think I have ever gotten on that account. And so I was like, okay, cool. But then I was able to say back into my stories, hey, this episode is live for everyone who rated it. Here you go check it out. And like having that back and forth interaction with them. And then in the episode, I said, you guys voted on it. If you want more episodes like this or you have ideas for future episodes, leave a comment, send me a DM. And so that was really great because I had someone send me a DM and they were like, I want all of the solos. I was like, cool, not going to happen, but give me some ideas, some more specific ideas. And so it gives me that option to be back and forth with them. Next, increase your audience through strategic podcast guesting. Track your results to see what is working and what isn't. Are you getting in that 6-month span? Are you getting more people to leave ratings and reviews? Are you getting more people to send you DMs? What does that look like? And are you tracking it? And then use the call to action in every episode. Leave a rating and review or a comment on your favorite podcast app. And that's inclusive. And it also allows people to pick what they want. So that is kind of the end of all of the different things that you possibly could do with those goals. I'm going to go back to the goals page really quick. Conversion, impact, growth, and engagement are your options. Does anyone have any questions? And I'm going to stop my share.
Feel free to unmute or drop in the chat if you have a question. If not, I will put everybody in a short breakout room so you can say what is one thing you heard today that you're going to try, whether it's as a host or a guest. And I have to say, for me, that is the contest. I love that idea of asking people to leave ratings and reviews and then offering a free month in my membership for, whichever one I select, because that is such engagement. But the reviews are also going to say, like, oh, now I know who is actually listening to my podcast. And then you have more of a personal engagement too, because then you're connected with them beyond just getting the activity for ratings and reviews in your podcast. And guests can do the same thing because they can be leaving ratings and reviews on your individual episode, on videos on YouTube. So you can still do the same kind of engagement pieces even as a guest. Okay, I'm going to throw everybody in a breakout room in just a second, but I just realized I did not take a photo earlier. So let's take a photo so I can share that on social for everybody. Okay, if you want to put a heart on the screen or anything, feel free. 1, 2, 3. There we go. I got it. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to do a quick breakout room. No. Okay, that should be good. Okay, so share with your people in your room what is one thing you're going to try after hearing Alicia's presentation, and then we will come back and discuss further. I will give you 3 minutes, so you got 1 minute each to share your one thing. Accept your invitations. Welcome back, everybody. Looks like we lost a couple in the process, but does anyone want to share what their one takeaway or thing they want to try?
I think what Connie and I ended up with was like, even though I have 4 seasons of content, you said we could go back and apply some of the lessons learned, because
Yep.
I wanted to get the information out there. I just was like, okay, it's out, right? Kind of like my book. I did it. It's out there, and like, you know, I share it on social media, but I don't track it or
Right.
anything. So in terms of like growth, I wouldn't even know. So, but to be
Well,
able,
and I think that's why that measurable piece is so important. And for those who don't know, I used to do research in higher education, and we had to teach the professors how to assess if kids, the people were learning. It has to be measurable, but you don't always even know what that means depending on what you're assessing. And it's the same thing with podcasting. We can be putting it out there, but we're not checking to see where people are engaging and where they aren't, and where we should spend more time. And yeah, I think a lot of us as hosts, we just want to get it out. I just got to get this episode out. I just got to get it out. But we don't go back and say, was that the right title or the right first sentence? And so I did drop in the chat an article that I saw recently about SEO. It was put out by Podfest. They have a newsletter they put out. And this is a very long article, but it gives you a lot of tools to look at different aspects of your podcast and how you can tweak SEO. And I also highly recommend using a software like Capsho, which is what I use. And it generates your content from your episode, not from anywhere else. And so when I use it, it gives me a title for the audio episode. It gives me a different title for the video episode. It gives me different tags and hashtags for all the different platforms that I post it to. And I love that because it takes a lot of the guesswork out, but then I can still tweak it if I don't think that's working and it's not getting more engagement.
what is that?
It's called Capsho. And I will find the link for you. And if I don't get a chance to drop it in before we finish, I'll email it to you. And I can also email you. We did a whole deep dive on Capsho a couple months ago in the community, so I'll share that with you too. Anybody else want to share something they shared or something they want to try, something new? Anybody?
I have a quick question in regards to, DM me on what?
Yeah.
Facebook? I mean, yeah.
You decide where you are. Where are you the most? If you're on
Okay.
Facebook
So
the most, then say DM me on Facebook.
Or send me an email, right?
Yeah.
So like if email or you could say, like, if you're like, I don't want to give my personal email out, subscribe to my newsletter. I ask a question at the end of every single one, reply to that, and let's have a conversation, right? Like you get to choose what, like set that boundary however you want that boundary to look. So if DMing on social media is just not for you, that's okay. Find a different way.
Right.
Okay.
And sometimes it's
Thanks.
hard with DMing on social because you don't always see them unless you're following each other or you're connected on Facebook. But like I know Katerina loves Facebook, so that's where she's going to tell people to DM her. She's not going to say Instagram because she's not there as much, right? I'm on Instagram a little more, but that doesn't mean I'm checking my DMs every single day. So whatever you're going to say it to where you're going to see it. And sometimes email is the easiest because you can give your email or it'll be in the show notes. Or like I use Podpage for mine, and there's actually a sign up for my newsletter on Podpage. So then I get a notification when anyone signs up or sends me a message, and that comes directly to my email. So I'm not even having to check my Podpage account. It's sent to my email. So I see it when I scan my email every day. So figure out what is the easiest one for you, and then be consistent as a guest to say the same thing every time you're on a podcast. That way, you're not telling people 5 different places to connect with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else anyone wants to share or question they want to ask before we wrap up?
I do have another question.
Yes.
Why do downloads make such a big deal? I mean, because when I listen to podcasts, I don't download them. I just listen from wherever it is.
Yeah. So they call it downloads because you used to back in the olden days, you used to have to download it to your iPod. It's a podcast. And then you'd have to stream it that way. Now we stream it. Now we listen. And so there's two different variations of a download right now. One is IAB rated, the other one is not. If it's less than 60 seconds, it does not count as a download. You'd have to check the podcast platform to see how they determine which one is which. If they listen to more than 60 seconds in one sitting, then it counts as a download.
I'm my friend.
So, yeah, that is how it works. But it's the same thing. Downloads just means streams, views, listens, etc.
And some apps are different. Like I remember at one point Apple was saying you had to listen for 5 minutes or 3 minutes. But now in Apple you can click download episode, so that automatically counts no matter how much or little So what it really means is a download is a listen. It's just it came from a place where you had to physically download it to be able to listen to podcasts in the beginning of podcasting, but now you can stream it, so you don't have to download it to your phone or computer. But ultimately downloads equals listens. So if I have an episode that's been downloaded 50 times, that means 50 different people have listened to it, or at least 50 different phones or computers. Like I could listen to one episode on 3 places on mine to get more downloads, which I probably did in the beginning. So it kind of depends on the app and where people are listening.
Okay, because like when I fly, you kind of want to download it because you're not going to be streaming.
Right.
And that's still available, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's why a lot of people do download so they can listen even when they're not connected to Wi-Fi. So that's why we have that option. But if you listen to a certain amount, that still counts technically as a download for the podcast. Yeah, it's it's different for Apple, Spotify. But that's just the vernacular we use. Okay, before we end up, I want to first of all thank you, Alesia, for sharing your strategy and your ideas. Every time I hear you, I learn something new or think of a new idea. So thank you. I'm going to drop in the chat again. We are having the Women's Podcaster Party again in November, but I'm not going to have a speaker. And with Thanksgiving and showing gratefulness, I thought it'd be good to have a full hour of networking. So we'll do lots of breakout rooms. We'll have some hot topics, and we'll just get to do some more networking. I also have a couple events in the membership coming up that you are welcome to join. I'm doing on the 29th a podcast like-a-thon and review swap. So come with your links. We will all subscribe, follow, rate, review, all those fun things, whether it's your podcast or a guest episode or your YouTube channel. And I'm also doing the live pitch fest again on November 4th, which some of the people in the room were there for our last one. We had 12 women live pitching themselves as guests, so that was a lot of fun. It's also a great way to practice your pitch. And then right now, through the end of this year, I am offering my community membership for only $20 a month, which allows you to attend all of these events and more. So please come join us. Connie and Katerina are both members, so I always love to have new people join. And if you know someone or a topic that you would like to see covered in one of our networking events, please let me know. Connect me or give me some ideas. I'm starting to build out the calendar for next year, and I really want to bring in people and topics that all of you want and want to learn more about. Well, thank you again for coming. Thank you, Alesia, for speaking, even through your sore throat and cough. We appreciate you. I will send a follow-up email with the link to the replay if you want to rewatch or make any other notes. And I hope to see you all again soon. Bye. Thank you.